Hello and welcome to the podcast from Stress to Success Blueprint. I'm your host, Lolita Goren. And today I have my dear friend, Shelly Shumway. Thank you so much for spending the time with me today. And
Mm,
please tell me a little bit about yourself. And for those who don't know you, who are you and what you do?
awesome. I'm Shelly Shumway. I'm from Shelly, Idaho. Not intentionally. I'm a transplant and I've got five kiddos. They're married about 23 years. And I have been an emotion coach for the past 9 years, helping business moms to turn to God in their business and whoever they believe God to be, the God of their understanding, and also to help them increase their sales, increase their client base.
So, you know, God is such a popular word for centuries, obviously. But how did you get into how did you get clear with your message? Like why you were like, well, you know what? I need to talk about that.
I had a really low point about 10 years ago, 9 years ago, where we were living in this awful rental home. It was dark, it was depressing, and I was just starting my coaching business. And I was doing everything that I could to gain more clients at this time, and nothing was working. And I was trying to shoot my own videos, and the backgrounds were awful because we lived in this tiny little rental home. And it was during this time that I found out I was pregnant. We already had four kids, and those four pregnancies were quite traumatic because I have rods in my back, which makes pregnancy and giving birth feel like I am breaking my back again with every contraction. It is a very scary experience. And I, finding out that I was pregnant again, I was terrified. I thought I went backwards with each of those pregnancies. And I didn't want to go backwards again. I had just started my coaching business. I was working, I was doing everything that my mentors were telling me to do. And I felt like if I could keep going, that I could gain more traction in my business. And so this hit, and I'm horizontal on the couch, sicker than a dog, which I had not been with my other four, thinking, what in the world? And how am I going to, for one, live through this pregnancy? And for two, how am I going to build my business? This seems like awful timing. And I've always been a God-loving person. I've always been a religious person, although most of my clients are not necessarily religious. And so I was walking down the country road. We live in the country, and this rental home was also in the country. I was walking down this country road and I was talking out loud to God, and I was saying, I am terrified and I can't do anything about it. I'm not going to abort this baby. And what in the world am I going to do? I don't think I can do this again because my other four kids were also colicky and they screamed night and day pretty consistently for the first 9 or 10 months of newborn life. So newborn life was not fun for me. It was very stressful. And I went backwards, I felt like mentally, emotionally, physically with every one of those pregnancies, although I love my kids. And I just didn't want to do that again. So I'm walking, I'm talking out loud, I'm desperate. And I say, I don't think I can do this again. And what is the timing of all of this? This is awful timing. And this little thought comes into my head, and I still remember exactly what it said. It was, write a story about how you desire it to be, and it will be. And I thought, really? Is that possible? Okay. And it took a lot of faith to actually act on that. But I have come to realize that those little nudges, those are God for me. And the more that I listen and do those little nudges, the more of those impressions come to me and they lead me to success. So I got on my computer and over the next week, 10 days, I wrote out a new story of how I wanted that pregnancy and that birth to go. My sister had visited a few months earlier with one of her little newborns, and she had burped him, or actually, no, she didn't burp him. Like my kids didn't never burped. That's why and they just screamed all the time. And so I could never get them to burp. They could, I don't know why, but they just couldn't do it. She fed her baby and then just brought him up to a sitting position and he burped all by himself. I mean, this huge burp out of this tiny body. And I'm like, that actually is possible? You can do that? And I was thinking, wow, none of my kids have ever done that. So while I was typing out this story, that memory came back to my mind. And I thought, oh, that would be a miracle. And it's completely impossible. My other four kids did not do that. I was a colicky baby. My husband was a colicky baby. I blamed it on that. I'm like, it's genetic. This next baby is going to be colicky and not be able to burp just like the other four. But that little voice in my head said, whatever you put in this, it will be. So I wrote that in there, which sounds funny to say maybe to other people, but for me, that was life changing for me and life changing in that time period. So I wrote that in as well as a whole bunch of other things. And so fast forward, I have the baby, and it's so interesting how everything fell into place. Every single thing that I wrote. So now we're getting to the part where I have this newborn baby, and it's such an amazing experience, so much better than any of the other experiences that I had. And my mom comes over the second day after I have this baby. She comes over to help. Well, she knows how my babies are. So she lifts up my baby after I feed her and starts pounding on her back, assuming that it's going to take an hour for her to let out this tiny little burp. And I say, wait, mom. I said, lay her back down. So she's looking at me funny. She's like, what? Okay. So she lays her back down. And I said, okay, just wait a minute. Okay, now very slowly lift her back up. So just sit her up really slow. And so she did. And she's like, what? Why are you having me do this? And all of a sudden, this huge burp comes out of this little baby. And she looks over at me like, oh, did that really happen? I'm like, yes, that really happened. That was miraculous. Her digestive system was different than all of the others. She was a content baby. I actually loved the newborn experience, and I had never loved it before. It had been terrifying and awful for me. This writing a new story, trusting the nudges that were coming, that it wasn't just writing the new story, it was reading it again and again and growing my belief in it, growing my trust that all these impossible things that had never happened in the other pregnancies could actually happen. And so I had to build that inside of myself. And then as I did that, it started to feel real to me. That story started to feel like it's already happening, even though it was a couple months till I was going to have the baby. Like I was living it every day. Even the impossible things I had never experienced before, I was living them as well as I could in my mind. My imagination, I was using that for that. And then watching all of these things happen, and it felt like miraculous, miracle after miracle after miracle, just because they were so impossible. So after this experience, I started listening a lot more to these nudges. I started listening more to this inspiration that was coming and realizing, oh, wait, this isn't just my brain. These are ideas that are coming from somewhere else because that new story, There's no way I would have written that on my own. There's no way I would have had any of those ideas come to me. Those were impossible. And I was not in the state of mind to do that. So for me, listening to those nudges, listening to that inspiration, I started to realize, oh gosh, well, that's God. That's God. Oh my word. He's been helping me this whole time. And he's helped me in the past, but this was super critical for me. So then I started helping other women with the same thing. I would teach them how to write a new story for themselves for whatever was causing the most stress, whatever was causing the most worry. I would teach specific little practical tips to get them into a place where they could actually get those ideas and then grow their belief, grow their trust, grow their faith in the impossible things. And that has slowly grown over the next 9 years to I help business women in their business decisions and their personal life to ask those practical, like bring God in practical ways in different areas of their life that they wouldn't have thought to do. And it gives them a sense of peace and confidence moving forward. I hope that answered your question.
No, I love it because, if you just gave me like a short answer, I would be actually asking more or to expand on that. So you just read my mind like you always do, and you just gave me a good, solid answer. So thank you. So, okay, since this is a podcast about stress management, um, how is that you manage your stress these days? Do you have like a routine that you do?
I do. I do. How I start my morning, that really sets me up for the rest of the day. And you hear that from a lot of success coaches and other mentors. And so that's what I do. I have a routine of self-care that I do in the morning. And part of that is prayer and getting out my little book that I got at the store. And I noticed that when I have my book and my pen handy and I'm asking questions and I'm talking to God about the stressful things, about the things that I'm actually worried about, which it's so funny how that happens in the morning. We'll have worries come in without us even thinking about it. We'll have worries come in sometimes in the morning, like things that we're worried about that may not actually even be a big deal. And all of a sudden we're stressed out and we're like, why? Why am I stressed out? So I take those to God. I ask him about it. I'm ready to receive. Sometimes I will actually, in the morning, I will actually write to him in the morning and tell him what I'm worried about. And I listen for little nudges. I listen for little thoughts that feel and sound different than what I would say. And a lot of the time, it feels more neutral. Like I feel like a heightened stress. And these little impressions that come to my mind, and I've trained myself to do this, right? I've trained myself to be open and hear. And the more I hear, the more I hear. The more I write it down and acknowledge it, the more I receive. And they don't sound stressful like this. They're a lot more like right here. And then I follow and I do. Like, I'll give you an example. So the other day, I had a list of 10 equally urgent things that had to be done. And they were causing me a lot of stress because who can do 10 things in a day? Like we all think that we can do more than we can, really. We all, at least I think, that the majority of us are not very realistic about our time and our priorities. And this was one of those days that I was really not realistic. And they all felt equally urgent to me. And I was really spinning in my head about it, feeling like, no, they really are all urgent. I'm looking at this list. So I took it to God. So I said, what do you think about this? So this could be universe, this could be a mountain that you're asking. This could be Mother Nature. This could be the tree out in your yard or whatever it is. Um or spirit or universe or however if you believe in any kind of higher being or higher power, this would be what I do. So I just say, what do you think? What do you think about my list? And it's so interesting how he said, well, he slashed the first one. He's like, this one isn't important because of this. This is like irrelevant to your day because of this. I'm like, oh, that's right. That's true. And then he said, and these two can be combined into one action. Oh, I see that. And then he just kind of went through my list and he's like, and it wasn't like in a mean way or a judgmental way. It was a, you can do it. Like I am going to do some of this for you. I'm going to help you to accomplish all of these things because they are important to you, but I'm going to show you a higher way or a better way than what your brain can comprehend right now. I'm going to show you a better way to get these things done and a more supportive way because you're not supporting yourself. You're causing yourself a lot of stress by saying that these are all equally urgent. And I know how to take care of you. I know that you care about all these things, so I'm going to help you get them done. Just trust me how they get done because they might get done in a different way than what you wanted because you want control. And I do. I love control. But giving up control and asking him for his input actually helps me get things done faster, more efficiently, and get done all the things that I needed to get done. And some of those things get done on their own without me even doing anything, which I is still astounding to me every time it happens. I don't ever get used to that. It's still equally like, wow. So that's one thing that I do to help with stress is I talk to him in the morning and write things down.
So what would you tell to someone? And by the way, I'm also tell my clients to make sure that they start the morning right with the right state of mind. And there are different techniques. People say, "Oh, you need to meditate and all this." Like I don't meditate in the morning, otherwise because I'll be going back to sleep. I already tried multiple times. It doesn't work for me. I'm a night owl, so it really depends on different people what they like and how they live their lives. But what if somebody says, "Well, I don't have time in the morning." So, what are the things that they can do you think that can help them from your perspective?
Mm. The first thing that comes to mind is if you don't have time in the morning to set your day up right, then you will probably be spinning in indecision and crazy priorities throughout the day. And I will only say that because that's my experience. When I don't take time in the morning, even if it's 5 minutes, it doesn't necessarily have to be a long time. And in my perspective, God knows exactly how many minutes you have. And if you've only got 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, He can give you a download, that's what I call it, that that in an instant, an understanding in an instant of what needs to be done doesn't actually have to take a long time. And a lot of times mine, I've got 5 kids at home and I've got a business that I run from home and then all of their stuff as well, and a husband. so, so there's a lot going on in my world. And in my perspective, God is aware of all of that. So he can give you something in a very short time. If I don't do that and I disregard my morning routine or things just out of my control happen in the morning and I am off to the races without having that time, I always, I'll just have like, whenever I can, I'll just kind of pause and I'll just say, how are things going? And sometimes that's my intuition answering. Sometimes it's God answering. It doesn't really matter. It's, I just pause and I say, okay, how am I doing? How's my nervous system feeling? How, how calm and relaxed am I? I get a lot more done when I'm relaxed than I do when I force myself to move forward. When I'm relaxed, things just flow and I'm able to get things done with greater joy, greater, like true joy in the happiness, like in the journey, like true happiness, like gratitude for all the little things during the day when I'm in that relaxed state. When I'm in the stressed state, I just force. And I think I am the only one. It's all up to me, and I can't get any help. And sometimes that's what I personally go into when I'm not in the state of, actually, I've got a ton of heavenly help. I've got a ton of help to even help me regulate my nervous system. Does that answer your question?
Well, yes, you answered. What is that you do when, let's say, something, because we just talked about the beginning of a day, but as you know, life happens. And, then just things shows up in the middle of a day, what no matter what you do. So, do you have a like a your what I call a stress management toolbox that you can pull up and help yourself in the situation when something's happening that moment? What is that you do?
So sometimes if I'm stressed while I'm driving, I'll do some EFT or tapping, and I'll just tap on just my collarbone. Sometimes if I'm like serious, I'll just do the whole traditional tapping cycle, because I really don't care what people think of me when I'm driving down the road, and I can drive with one hand. And so that taking 3 deep belly breaths, people disregard that and think that that is not actually beneficial, but the breath is so important and so helpful in regulating your nervous system and helping you come back down. So, another one that I do, so tapping, deep breathing, or breath work if I've got time. A lot of times I don't take the time to do breath work in the middle of the day. That is more of a morning thing for me personally. Um, but the third thing that I'll do is I will just pause and say, hold on, I'm feeling stressed. Why? Why am I feeling stressed? And then I'll add, and then the thoughts will come up. Well, I'm worried about this. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about this. So I'll take that first one and say, okay, is that actually true? Is that thing that I'm stressing about, is that actually stressful? And it's so funny how sometimes our brain in the back of our brain will actually make up a story saying that that thing is stressful unless we look at it and actually ask ourselves and say, is that thing actually stressful? Oh, actually, no, it's not. I actually really enjoy that thing. And these are the reasons why. Wow, it's amazing that I was feeling really stressed about that. Like I'm not going to do a good job, or it's going to be really hard. And I was actually even um I was, oh, what's the word? The word is on the tip of my tongue, but I really didn't want to do. I was dreading it. That's the word. I was dreading doing that thing. But when I actually looked at it and I said, now, what am I worried about with that? I couldn't really come up with anything because really it was just a story that my mind was making up about it. When I looked at the evidence, the truth of the matter, I actually like enjoy all of those things. It actually isn't stressful. I used to do that with clients. I would look at my day and I would say, gosh, I've got these 3 clients, and then I've got this Zoom thing, and I've got this training. Gosh, my day looks so big and overwhelming. I used to like, and sometimes I'll still fall into this trap, and I'll feel stressed about it. I'll feel like that's too much. And then I'll look at each one and I'll say, okay, this call with Christy, what does that look like? Oh, I love talking to Christy. She's amazing. I love talking. It's so yummy talking to her. Oh, okay. So do you need to worry about that? Oh, I guess not. And so, like, I'll do that with each of the things in my day that I'm stressed about. And so, in the middle of the day, I'll do that. I'll say, okay, wait a minute. I'm stressed. What am I stressed about? And when I actually look at it and ask for the truth, and what I call it is truth with a lowercase t, is what the programs in my subconscious are telling me. Truth with an uppercase T is what my intuition or God is telling me. So when I ask, I pause, maybe take a deep breath and say, what is actually truth with the uppercase T about this? The truth will come. And I'm like, oh, I actually really like that. I'm excited about that part of my day. And then I'll just go through the other parts of my day. I'm like, you know what? I'm all right. It might be a busy day, but I'm all right. I can do that.
So what would you say? I mean, I know from dealing with a lot of people, I know that there are two things that are very, very stressful. It's worrying all the time about the money because they don't have enough money, they have debts and they have to go to work and find a work, whatever. And the second thing is worrying about your family and the kids and parents and the controlling of other people really and the other people health and happiness. So what would you tell them?
Okay. So money, I'm very acquainted with both of these things because at some points we have been in deep, deep, deep debt from a failed business years ago that it's taken us a long time to recover from. So I understand the debt. I understand okay, we've got to juggle money so we have enough money to buy groceries this week. And I understand that very well. And so what I do with that is I actually go to what I learned from Wayne Dyer. And he talked about what you focus on grows. And when you live in abundance with what you already have, then you can allow more abundance into your life. And it's not just a woo woo, oh, that's such a great thought, because that's what I used to think. I used to think, oh, that's just woo woo. That's a great thought. Well, sure. That's a great thought to put in your book. That's a great thought to teach people. But does that actually work? Well, I'm a living testimony of that it actually works. And the reason why it works is because when you are, I would draw a picture for you, but I don't know. I guess I could. Okay, I'm going to draw a picture for you because this is what I do with my clients. So, say this is, can you see this okay?
Yes, perfect. I
Okay,
love you doing this.
okay, awesome. So, this is you. This is the financial prosperity that you're dreaming of, that you're hoping for. Well, when you've got worries in your mind, I call that emotional clutter. And so you've got all of this emotional clutter going on. So this one right here is your relationship with your parents. This right here is your relationship with your kids and worries about your kids. This big thing down here is you're stressing about paying the bills. And are we ever going to get out of the financial situation we're in right now? Are we ever going to dig ourselves out of this? Are we ever going to be able to not live paycheck to paycheck? Most people, I can only speak for the United States, are living paycheck to paycheck. And many in other countries are worse off. So we have all this emotional clutter. Well, when you're all cluttered up, you can't see this very clearly. It feels impossible. You feel like, well, that's a good thing for other people. But this is where I'm at. I will never get there. And another thing is you don't know the little steps that it takes to get there because you're so cluttered up that you can't even receive those. Those little ideas can't even come into your mind because your mind you have no space for that. So one of the things that I teach is emotional decluttering. And one of the ways that you can do that, a very simple way, is to get out what I call a working notebook. It's not a journal, it's just a working notebook. It's a spiral notebook that you can get at Walmart for 19 cents. And I buy a case of these every back to school. Every year I buy a case of them. And my husband and I go through them. We use them up. So one of the things that helps you declutter is writing down all of the stressors, writing them down, getting them outside of you, taking them outside of you. And when you do that, you've opened up a little bit of space here so that you can receive Information from other sources. You can't fill an already full cup. You have to get some of it outside of your body. We store those big emotions that we feel very intensely or feel for a long time. We store those things in our body, and they will stay there until we intentionally take out the trash. So that's another way that I say emotional decluttering is like taking out that kitchen garbage. You do not want it to stay there and get smelly and fall over the edges and oh, nobody likes that. And that's how it feels inside when we get too cluttered up, when we let that stress stay. And that's what we focus on, and it grows and grows and grows into something that it wasn't ever. It wasn't ever that big. It was a tiny little thought. But we sometimes do that. So emotionally decluttering is super important. And then you can start to see one thing that I would add here, and I know we don't have time to teach it right here, but what I do now is I do some emotional decluttering and I write down with great energy all of my stressors. So sometimes I'm writing in letters that are like 2 inches high, and I'm underlining it and I'm circling it, and my pen is going through 5 sheets of paper because I'm so blasted frustrated. I'm so blasted, like I'm getting out the energy. If you do that exercise politely, or think that you can't have that adult temper tantrum because you were taught as a kid that you can't do that, which a lot of us avoid. So if you do it politely, that's about how much stuff you're going to let go of. If you really feel it and you're so ticked off and you're ready to be done and you're ready to feel better and you're so mad and you're so done, that's what moves it. That's what moves the energy out, right? And you give it a place to go. Energy follows our intention. So all of that mad, all that sad, all the frustrated, the hurt, the betrayal, all of the resentment, the jealousy, all of the big heavy feelings, this stuff goes onto your paper. The way I've upgraded this is that after I get a certain amount out, I actually am aware now of little thoughts that come in, little pings that come in, and they feel different. They feel neutral. They feel almost hopeful. They feel different than my angsty, I'm so done with all of this feeling. It's like, maybe you ought to do this. Oh, and so I'll put when I'm writing, so I'm writing all of my crap, and then I get one of those little pings, those little sparks. And or it just, and sometimes it doesn't feel like a spark. Sometimes it's just a little thought that comes in, but it feels more neutral. I will capture it, because if I don't, it'll go right through me and it's gone and I won't remember. So I put a little dash and then I write whatever that thing is. Even if I don't understand it, even if I don't believe it, even if it seems impossible, which all of those things have been, it has been that many times for me, I will write it anyway. And then I'll go back and finish what I was saying here. And then I'll go back and look at it and say, now, what was that? Oh, wow, really? And so that started me on with my conversations with my higher power is I would say stuff and then I would receive, because I'm letting go, I would start receiving stuff, little impressions or nudges or ideas or just knowledge, like of things that I hadn't occurred to me. And I would write these down, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. And I have notebooks of these conversations. And so that has changed my world. So now I'm able to get direction on every area of my life. And I use this for every area of my life. I was even told once to get a dog. I was like, okay, I wasn't even asking about that. I was asking about my business, but really? And the thought was, yeah, your kids need a dog. I had been successfully avoiding getting a dog for 10 years. I'm like, no, I don't desire to get a dog. Don't have the budget for a dog. It's thousands of dollars to get a dog. Or, and it was like he read my mind, because he did. And he said, hey, Get a dog like you had growing up, a purebred Cocker Spaniel, 4 years old, house trained, kind and gentle from one loving home to another. That's how my dog Ramsey came to us when I was a teenager. And I thought, that sounds impossible. I mean, at the time, we were like tens of thousands of dollars in debt. I'm like, I don't have the budget for a dog and to feed a dog and to buy the dog. And, but I trusted what I got. And I'm like, okay, what do I do first? And he said, look, the thought that I call God, the thought was, look at rehoming Facebook groups in your area. Anyway, I think I might have already told you this story, and I'm not sure, but uh, so there were 5 groups, 5 pet rehoming groups on Facebook in my area. I couldn't believe it. And through that, I just kept asking questions and asking questions. Within 12 days, we had our Cocker Spaniel. He was 3.5, pretty much house trained, kind and sweet and gentle. We paid less than $100 for him. Purebred cocker, beautiful. And everybody would say, wow, I've never seen a cocker that looked like that before. His name is Bentley, and beautiful dog. Anyway, so sometimes unexpected things come when you're doing this kind of work, but it's always good. It's always joyful. It's always to bless your life. So that's what I do.
I love that you show the whole process, and that just really shows that's why to first acknowledge it how you feel very important, labeling the emotions, allowing yourself, not abandoning yourself, but being there for yourself, honoring your emotions, allowing yourself to put that on a piece of paper. And I love that you write in notebooks, because there's a huge connection between the brain and the hand and how we handle this, but also the having the intention to let go of this thing. And when you and it reminds me a lot when you say that, oh, you'll have all those big emotions, but then there's some things better come up. This is like you get out of it. This is just like going through the ladder of emotions, like you have. I'm sure you've seen, and those who are listening, and they've seen it before. Like you be like very in despair, and then you end up in love, just going through the emotions of letting go more and getting in a better and better feeling, which has to do, with vibration and everything and energy and all of that. That I just love that you showed that whole process, because it has multiple points there that it just that's exactly why we need to do it, because that just totally works. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, thank you. You're
Okay,
welcome.
so we don't have too much time left, but I want to ask and I always ask everyone on my without anyone that I interview, how was your childhood? Like, did you learn this, for example, this process when you were growing up? Because there's, like when we grow up, we have this we go from, we learn it in childhood how to deal with the rest of our lives. And that's how we manage stress, because that's what we've been taught, how we manage it. So what was your education in childhood? And obviously we know now that you're doing an amazing job when it comes to with stress management. But did you get this from your childhood?
Of course not. So, so childhood for me was a little bit scary. We were not a close family. I was scared of my dad. My mom was everywhere all at once and kind of a default mom. And I never told my parents anything. It was not a trusting home, not a trusting relationship. My room, I was fortunate enough to have my own room, and that was my sanctuary. And so I was drawn to scripture at a young age. And so I would read scripture for my peace, and that's how I would get peace. I would, when we were a church going family most of the time. Sometimes my family didn't go and I would get a ride with somebody because I felt at church, the message came to me a few times that God is not like the people that I lived with, that he actually loves me and that he is not like my parents, and that I got the impression you might not trust your parents for a while. It might not be until you're an adult that you actually can allow yourself to trust your parents. And it's okay because I've got you, you can talk to me instead. And so that's when I started. That was about age 14, 13, 14. And so that's when I started consulting God and didn't consult as much with what I call horizontal sources or other human people. I would listen, but I always took it with a grain of salt, especially whatever my parents told me, huge grains of salt. And I would talk to God because I knew I could rely on that source, that He was different than all the people, and He was different than me. So I could trust Him, even though I didn't know a lot about Him at the time. And so prayer and scriptures for me were that's what I hung on to. And then it wasn't until fast forward till my fourth child, I had my first four really close together, and then we had the gap, and then the fifth one. So after my fourth one was born, there was a woman that I went to church with that said, let's start a book club. And why don't we have it at your house? Because you're the only one that has little kids and nap time, which I was so grateful for. And just because whenever they were awake, they were crying. So I would plan it during nap time, and most of the time it worked. And that's when I started learning about mindset, started learning about, oh, there's like, I can actually control what's in here. I can actually do something about that because I thought that me feeling better was controlling everything outside of me. And that didn't work. That hadn't ever worked. And so realizing that I can do something about my personal energy and what my personal emotional clutter was, that I could tidy it up by myself. That's where that journey started. So that started 15 years ago. And then I gradually learned about um, tools like vision board and writing new stories. And then I started getting epiphanies like, hey, you're going to teach this. And I'm thinking, are you serious? And he would say, well, why not you? Look what you've overcome. You can help other people do the same thing. So that's how it organically started from there. So, yeah, as an adult, all of this stuff.
Yeah, I love that you're sharing, of course, your story, and everyone they have their own different stories, how they arrive to the point where it's time to change. Um, I noticed that what had to do with me personally is because I grew up in a childhood with, not very happy and constantly in fear and terror. Um, and I read somewhere that it says the way your relationship with parents are, that's how your relationship with any authorities would be, meaning government, God, universe. And because I didn't trust my parents because they were constantly terrorizing me, really, um, it sounds like oh harsh, but my dad was alcoholic, and I mean you never know what stage he's going to come in and what he's going to throw today at me. So I mean,
Yep.
it was very nerve-wracking. And I'm only one child, so I mean there was not like brothers sisters that can stood up for me or something, and so it was very very stressful. And so I never had that trust with the authorities. I always knew that I have to do it myself. If I'm not gonna do it, then it's not gonna happen, not definitely not in my favor. And because it all has to do with the safety. But then I carry that on to my adult life of saying, well, pray that didn't help and actually made worse, and where were you when I needed you? And I know a lot of my clients that come to me, they have, because they have childhood traumas, they come with a broken trust for authorities. So it's very hard for them to pray something. Yeah, I already prayed a million times, and what was he, like what, all of this. So when I'm listening to your story, it's incredible that you could be in the in an environment where you don't trust the authorities, but then you will be like, oh yeah, God, yeah, you're my bestie, so that's very interesting how to see how that was very that you were able to separate those two. Not many people could do that, so I salute you.
Thank you. That was a gift. That wasn't anything of my own. That was just, I feel like that was given so that I could survive. And I think we're all given what we need to survive in the moment. And I wonder if God knew that I would eventually be talking about him in my business, which also terrified me. I think he knew that that's where I would end up. And so I think he needed to give me that from the get-go so I could have the courage to say, yeah, he's there and yeah, he's different than everybody else. And I don't understand all of that. My mind doesn't I can't wrap my mind around all that, but I just know he is. And at the same time, I understand the authority thing because that's how I am with all authority except him. So I don't make a very great employee, for instance. And I never did. I never was a great employee. I was always thinking outside the box and wanting to do things differently. And um, and so I think that was a gift. And I'm just and but I didn't actually even notice it until later in life when I actually was looking back and said, "Oh yeah, I got that. I got that impression." It was when my kids were little that I remembered that. Like it was brought back to my memory. Like, oh yeah, I did get that little impression when I was sitting in church. So, yeah, I realized that not everybody has that. And and honestly, I don't know how to lead people through that except to listen to the nudgings because people feel nudgings where they might not trust God, they might get nudgings. They might feel pulled in a certain direction. And even if they feel like it's just themselves, that's great. I think when we respond to the little nudgings, to the little sparks of ideas, wherever they come from, I feel like that trust in something bigger, it slowly grows. And I think a lot of people are in that space where they don't trust God
Well, they
and
don't
they
trust
think
even
that,
themselves. That you need to start trusting yourself and not keeping promises that you cannot, or breaking. And that's just like a whole new conversation about the whole childhood trauma and all the patterns. Um, so obviously, as you know, we can talk about that forever, but we can't. And I'm so happy that you showed that process, how to do that. And for those who really would like to get more help, can you tell me how you can help them, what you find you, what you do these days? And because I think anyone who's listening in right now and want more clarity, how to get where you just taught them to and how to do the process, and you take the hand and actually walk through that, that'd be great to contact you.
awesome. I do. I have a website, Shelly and Shumway, just two N's, shellyandshumway.com. And that website is just barely going up in this next month. And it's a new one. And I'm also on Facebook, Shelly Shumway. You can find me there. And that's where a lot of people find me, is actually on Facebook. I'm on Instagram a little bit, Shelly C. Shumway, because my big name is Kramer. So Shelly C. Shumway. I'm on Instagram. That's my Instagram handle. So you can find me there. I do one-on-one, I do group, and I speak from stage. So that's how I help people right now. So yeah, reach out to me. I would love to do a free consult and just help you where you're at. And if it works to work together, great. And if not, I've given you some tools to move forward if you desire those.
And for those who are listening and they're thinking, nah, I'm good. I bet you know people in your family or your coworkers or your neighbors or your friends or whatever that probably can use Shelly. So reach out, get them to talk to her. Okay. So go find Shelly on Facebook, on Instagram, and keep an eye on her because I heard that there is a book coming up in the coming months. It's this year. So keep an eye you open. And thank you so much, Shelly, for being here.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.